Welcome to a special edition of Filter Free with Tahira Renee Christie. During a recent interview with one of my very best friends, Elizabeth Boyd, we talked about abortion recovery and the new book that she has coming up, talking about that very subject. Some of the conversations that we had were very intense, and I wanted to share with you some of my expertise and experience with the subject, so I hope that this conversation is of benefit to you. If it is not, you do have the option to not listen, but understand that the opinions that are expressed in this podcast are that of my own and Elizabeth, and we appreciate you listening. Please grab a copy of her latest book off of Amazon. The link is in bio.
I think the biggest thing for therapy is feeling connected with the therapist and feeling that you can trust that they're going to have not a solution to your problem, but give you enough that you feel that validation. I mean, we keep talking about validation. I say that because I see it so much in the way that people interact with each other. I felt like I've had some really great therapists, and then I've had some therapists that are like, "You don't need me. You're fine." And that happens a lot, and that is invalidating because I have the gift of gab and can talk my way through anything. That does not equate me being fine. But in today's society with therapy, if you're not on your deathbed, literally actively trying to kill yourself or strung out on drugs and alcohol, I have Kaisers, so they're like, we don't have anybody in our roster for you, you know? I've literally had therapists like release me on multiple occasions. I'm like, dang, because they're like, you got this. You just need to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out. So I've had that happen. So finding a safe space, I think, is the most important thing that I've experienced. And the great part for me is the safest spaces that I've been in are the ones I created. I wish that I had more safe spaces in a clinical setting, but they're just not designed that way. Therapy is to give you resources to read and explore and educate yourself with. They're not there to heal you. Have a great day, Talia. They're not there to heal you. They're there to heal you. And I had to figure that out through years of therapy. So that's why I became a life coach.
So you're going to the therapy hoping and positive that it's going to heal you, only to learn that it's not actually there to heal you.
A resource. Same thing with the church. I went to church expecting to get healing there because I see people do altar calls. I'm in with the pastor and the pastor's wife. There's lots of people there. Well, I had to 17 years of figuring out the church is a hospital and everybody's a patient. And there's not very many nurses and doctors there at all. They're not there to heal you. They're there to appease you, to ensure you come back week after week, pay your tithes and offerings so their building can continue. So that's not a safe space either because there's a lot of judgment in that space. So that's why I say is I was like, well, then where do people go? And that's when I started with retreats and I started with women's groups and specialty groups because the only safe spaces are the ones that are literally created for you. And you're getting me excited about wanting to do my retreat again because I'm like, dang, people really do need this. And I happen to have the capacity to manage it because the average person has not done the work and they don't know how to heal. They don't know how to self-soothe. And self-soothing is ultimately what got me through. Now, I read a lot. I ask questions a lot. I have smart people on my roster. I have amazing friends. I've got a great village, but I put the work in for that. And the average person is not willing to do that. So the average person is going to need a retreat. They're going to need a guru. They're going to need a teacher, some type of healing person that can come in and stand in the gap of what they're missing, where their deficiencies are, so that they can find the validation for their experience and begin the healing journey. But most people begin the healing. And then the work happens and they're like, oh, that's painful. I don't want to do the work. And then they're fine with the complacency, staying right where they are. How is that going to help? How ultimately is that going to get you to the next space so that you actually get through the breakthrough? Because it's like cleaning out your closet. I compare it to cleaning out the pantry. You got to get everything out the pantry, clean off the gunk, wipe down the walls, and then begin putting the cans and the boxes back And it's a mess before you do that. And that unfortunately is where most people stop in their healing process. They're not able to get past the hard work. It's a job. And
Yeah.
therapists need a therapist because
Yeah.
most therapists are not very good at filtering. Most therapists
Mm.
started in the industry because they care about people and they want to help people. And then, like most jobs, like teaching or anything else, like preaching, anything where you give constantly, you become complacent because you have
Mm-hmm.
stratospheres of types of person. You have the people you really want to help, but are not willing to help themselves, and the people who don't need your help, but require your attention. And you just become complacent and you don't see the value that you bring week after week, day after day of giving, and you're holding on to it. So then you become callous yourself. So it is really hard to find healers. That's why I say you need a team, because it's not for one person to take on. That they specialize in the aspects that are necessary for true healing. You can't just heal somebody spiritually and ignore their finances. You can't just make
Right.
sure somebody saves their money and then they're all messed up in the head. You can't just fix their head and they don't have stable housing and living. You got to heal the whole person, which is why coaching and retreats become important, because it's typically a team job. And when you're dealing with something like abortion healing, there are so many layers that get a woman to a position where they're in the position to make that decision. And
100%.
believe it or not, a lot of women have had more than one abortion.
Yeah.
Usually 3 or 4 is the average, which means you got that first time person who they can oftentimes be brought to their knees and shut down from one experience. And then you've got the person who's, I've done it 10, 12, 15 times, and this is just my method of birth control. And all
Yeah.
of it requires levels of healing. And all of it stems from a space that this woman or this child may have been in, that none of it has ever gotten addressed or validated. I keep coming back to that word because ultimately that is what is missing. This woman
Yeah.
needs to understand that her experience was there because she didn't feel something, didn't get something, didn't receive something back way back when, in her childhood, in her relationship with her dad, in her relationship with her mom, her whatever it happened, that she is now seeking that validation from this sexual experience with this particular guy that led to that particular sexual experience that led her to having that decision to be made, where she's now having to figure out if she wants to bear a child or not. And it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So even this is even talking about this is bringing up feelings from myself, like, damn, these are the things that I don't necessarily think about all the time, but when they come up, I'm like, damn, do you really have been through a lot? And I don't talk about it enough, because even if I do talk about it, judgment, and a lot of church people, the judgment is probably the first thing. That's not valid. That's the opposite of validation. it's it's the guilt, which is self-assigned, but we all feel it, and self-forgiveness. You know,
Yeah.
Cares if anybody else forgives me. I need to forgive myself. God didn't already forgiven me 20 times, 1,000 times over, because I've asked many, many times. Have I forgiven me? Have I revalidated myself, recommitted myself to myself to say you're okay,
Yeah.
in spite of, because of?
So then what are the things that you would say can be improved in a therapy or a coaching or a retreat setting? You've kind of touched on it a bit, but if you have more to say.
Yeah, in detail, I would move away from it feeling or even sounding or even saying therapy. That term is dead to me. And I say
Yeah.
that because it is truly, it's like a library. Library still exists, but books on tape, they don't, I don't even know what the, but you can stream a book faster than you can read a book. Therefore, that is the technology that we're working with. So therapy is like looking at a library. It's old technology. So coaching actually would signify that you are in the ring with this person. You are giving them the tools, you're giving them the conditioning, the training, in order for them to go out there and be a champion for themselves, in order for them to reap the benefits of healing thyself, of connecting with your source, whatever that is, whether that's God, Jesus, Buddha, Allah, Reiki, inside, whatever it is, you connecting with your source to find that level of validation that would suggest that you are okay, that you are fine, that you have grace within you. You have grace on your life because you've been through something real that is not your fault, that you have the opportunity to be validated, to be upgraded, and to help heal another person with. That it happened for a reason, not just so you can have a sad story about yourself, but so that you can also support the next woman. Because one thing I learned as a woman who was a single mom for 10 years, and I was told this many moons ago when I had my first set of kids, okay? You're the only single woman, single mother on this block, of this city, of this state, of this country, of this world. There are many of us walking around bewildered, trying to figure out how to make this thing work. A woman who's had an abortion, you are not the first. You will not be the last. I don't care what wives made tale is going on in the United States right now. They're going to find a way. If you don't want the baby, there's going to be a way for you to terminate the pregnancy.
Always.
I don't want to go back to back alley abortions where women are dying because they need they made a healthcare decision for themselves and their family. So that validation has to come from you. And the coaching has to come from someone who has been there. I don't want to see any male coaches coaching women on abortion validation. And I think that's what the term needs to be, abortion validation. Women need coaching support from women, not even necessarily clinical doctors, again, because that clinical portion of it they're not designed to heal. It's the difference between taking psych meds and taking magnesium for your mood. Magnesium.
It's a Band-Aid versus just getting rid of the root cause to begin with.
Do you want to heal or do you want to be pacified? Yeah. And if you're dealing with abortion healing, like coaching through this, my goal for you would to give you, do you want the magnesium pill or do you want the psych meds? That one costs $150. This one's $15. This one will heal you. This one will appease you for today. Just today, just for this. You know what I mean? So let's focus on healing women rather than appeasing them with resources as a therapist would for the moment. Let's help them to fish rather than serving them a meal. I want you to learn how to self-soothe so that you know that in those quiet moments, in those lonely moments where you can't find someone to validate your experience, you are self-validating so that you're going to be okay. So you understand the mercy and the grace for your experience is going to come from within you, because that supply will never run out, because you have the capability of self-love. You have the capability of self-care. You have the capability of nourishing yourself versus seeking someone else you.
Okay, so then what does that lack of validation or lack of self-love cost you, the general you, in terms of anything? Aggravation, money, time, frustration. What is the cost of that lack of love?
That's a great question. I mean, for some women, it costs them their lives. Whether you continue to live or you actually are suicidal. This is one of the hardest things a woman will ever go through, could ever go through. And I don't know the statistics of how many women have gone through it, because it is such a not talked about subject, but I'm sure we could find out. But I would assume at least 40% of women have gone through this. And then the women who decide to not go through it and they raise a child that they did not want and don't have the capacity or the means to take care of, how many kids are in the foster system or adoption center, and the guilt associated with that. What does it cost? It's cost her life, because she's never been stable. While she's alive, is she living? Did she ever find a husband? No. Has she ever been validated? No. Did she ever find her peace or her purpose? No. She's literally floating through life. living, everybody dies, but not everybody lives, Drake said. So true. She never had the opportunity to just be free and just live and say, you know what, I did this and I'm so sorry. And I acknowledge you. She never has. And at 68, 69 years old, she will never validate that young lady who's 26 now. She'll never validate her. But now that girl has to find validation knowing she don't know who her daddy is. Mother does not acknowledge her. She has great foster parents, but every child will always long to be and know their mother. Their father too, but every daughter wants to be with their mama. And if your mother doesn't want, so to invalidate people who want an abortion. And I know she only had that child because he grew up in a religious family and abortion was not an option. So you validate having unprotected sex out of marriage. It's fine. But you don't validate the abortion, which is it? Because if sin is sin, let's not damn one and say the other is okay, or the other is not okay. And this one, well, we can fornicate, but we can't abort.
Right.
So don't give me that.
Right.
We need to validate these women in whatever choice they make for their bodily autonomy to do what they want to do so that they are not raising children suffering through their invalidation. We must find a way for women to be self-empowered and validate their experiences so they are not passing on these generational curses based on they have not received what they needed as children. Because now we do have education. Now there is streaming services. Now there is Google. You can find out anything about anything if you want to. Are you willing to do the work? Which is why we got to teach these women how to fish, how to go out and find these resources for themselves so that they can self-soothe. And that's why the coaching and the group setting is so important, because the validation is built into the system. You'll get the education that therapy will give you, but you'll also get the validation that you need. You'll get the coaching and the guidance that you need. You'll get the resources that you need and the ongoing support that you desire so that you can self-soothe with confidence.
Yeah. Thank you.
That was the pitch.